Living with chronic anxiety is a lot like dealing with noise pollution. When your anxiety isn't that bad, it's not much more than a low buzzing in the background, like the sound of your refrigerator running, or the hum of electricity in the walls. But when things happen that increase your stress levels and trigger your anxiety, that buzzing starts to sound a lot less like a fridge and a lot more like a freight train about to run you over. I think noise pollution is the perfect analogy because if you take a look at this chart, you can see there's a normal range of noise that we can tolerate with no negative side effects. Things like the sound of rain falling or conversations going on around you at an office or at a restaurant. But the louder that noise gets, the harder to ignore it becomes. And then when it crosses that threshold and you're getting exposed to it over a long period of time, it can become harmful to both your body and your mind. And the same thing can happen when your anxiety levels get out of control. And we all have different thresholds for how much stress we can tolerate. And I think that as a trauma survivor and someone who also happens to be a highly sensitive person, my threshold is a bit on the low side. I've had anxiety for as long as I can remember, but it wasn't until I began decluttering my home back in 2016 that I started to become more aware of how the environment around me could trigger or increase my anxiety. And when my home was messy and chaotic, I could feel my heart start to race, and I would start feeling more on edge and notice myself becoming less patient and more short-tempered. So when I cleared away all of that clutter and I started being more mindful about the things that I buy and give space to in my home, it was like a dial turning down my anxiety. And my home became a place that supported my peace of mind and well-being instead of a constant source of stress. And so in today's video, I wanted to share a list of things that I've stopped buying, not only to reduce my stress and anxiety, but that have also helped the rest of the family feel calmer and happier as well. And one of the best things about this is that when you stop spending money on the things that you don't need, you have more money to put towards things that have a positive impact on your life. And for me, one of those things is therapy. And that's why I want to take a moment to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy, and that way BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's through text or chat or a phone call or a video call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you. And if your therapist isn't a good fit for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. And one of my favorite things about BetterHelp is that I can get the same level of quality and professionalism that I would expect from an in-office therapist, but with a therapist that was custom picked for me based on my history and needs, as well as a fantastically flexible schedule at a more affordable price right in the comfort of my own home. Right now, you can get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/A to Zen Life. That's HELP, or you can find my special URL linked in the description box and pinned comment below. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video, and let's dive into the topics. Number 1, loud toys. Remember how I showed you that noise level chart earlier, and there was this threshold kind of around 70 to 80 decibels where noise levels, once they pass it, start to become dangerous. Well, guess what? A while back, they did a study where they tested the noise levels of 200 kids' toys, and they found that 98% of the toys were measuring sound levels greater than 85 decibels from an arm's length distance, which is about the same level of noise that you'd expect from an airplane taking off or a vacuum cleaner running right next to you. And after I read this study, I was thinking to myself, no wonder that it used to make me feel so anxious when I would be cooking dinner or doing some errands or folding the laundry and my kids would be playing with these loud, obnoxious toys with the lights and the sounds and the moving and all the things. And if we as adults feel this way, what do we think that those toys are doing to our children? Now, after decluttering, we have gotten rid of most of our loud toys, but sometimes my kids get gifts from their friends for their birthdays that are a bit louder than I would like. But if it's really bothering me, what I'll do is I'll ask them to go back and play with the toy in their bedroom. And luckily, they don't really play with those toys for long periods of time, so they naturally limit their exposure, but can still enjoy playing with it from time to time. So I decided to test the noise level of my son's toy and I'm using an app called Neosh that measures the decibel levels. So let's turn this on and see how loud it gets. As you can see, my oldest son is much better at controlling this toy, and he loves to play with it, but it drives his little brother bananas. So luckily the battery only lasts for around 8 minutes, so he plays with it for limited windows, but you could see how it was getting up to above 80 and 90 decibels. So definitely check out the Neosh app if you're interested to know how loud your kids' toys are. Number 2. Coffee. This is something that my husband and I cut fairly recently, and it's also something that I remember discussing with my therapist because she was telling me that drinking too much coffee can make anxiety worse. And at that point, I was probably drinking around 4 cups in the morning and then still drinking tea later in the afternoon. And I was really pushing back and saying that it was something that I could never give up. But then when my husband and I decided to challenge ourselves to not drink coffee for a month, we ended up feeling so much calmer and more focused throughout the day that we decided to make it a more permanent cut. And if you want to know more about that and the rest of the 10 items that we cut from our budget, you can go watch this video that I'll link up here and in the description box below to check out more about that topic. Number 3 is more of a concept versus an actual item, and it's the minimalist aesthetic. Sometimes I like looking at pictures of homes that are decorated with the minimalist aesthetic, but the idea of trying to keep up with a home that looks like that.
Hey Vogue, it's Kim, and everything in my house is really minimal.
And live in a home that looks like that 24/7 is actually too much and anxiety inducing to me. So I found that for me personally, the minimalist aesthetic can start feeling really toxic and restrictive. That's just my opinion. That's the way I feel about it. Some people might be able to have, you know, the minimalist aesthetic and still be able to live exactly the life that they want. I bet they don't have kids. That might be the determining factor there.
4 kids hasn't messed up my cream house.
It's kind of like when you're trying to buy clothes. You don't just want to pay attention to how the clothes look. You also want to pay attention to how the clothes feel and fit your body. It doesn't matter how good something looks. If it's uncomfortable to wear, I'm not going to be reaching for that thing in my closet. I'm going to go to my tried and true hoodie, sweater, and pair of jeans. And the same thing goes with the minimalist aesthetic. It's funny because I don't think that I would use the word minimalist to describe the aesthetic that I have in my home at all. Like, yes, we have some IKEA furniture, but we also have like a very solid farmhouse industrial style dining room table that we found on sale at a local furniture store. And I would say that our kitchen is a more like wabi-sabi, asymmetrical vibe versus like the standard minimalist gray or white kitchens that you typically see. I mean, I have a pink flower quilt that was handmade by my grandmother over my bed in my bedroom, for crying out loud. So I definitely don't buy into the idea that your home has to look a certain way for you to be considered a real minimalist. Number 4 on this list is too many clothes. And I used to go shopping for clothes all the time just on a whim. I, in fact, used to work at a mall, and so I would be working in the fine jewelry department. My best friend worked over in the lingerie section. And then during our break, after our lunch, we would go and we would browse and see what kinds of new items had come in and if there was anything we wanted to buy. And I would just end up buying stuff literally just because it was there. And then I would always just end up having like piles of clothes on the floor. You know, my dressers would be literally hardly able to shut because there were so many clothes inside of them. And then if I had a closet, it would be overflowing with clothes too. And it was just too much inventory to manage. Now when I open my closet, because I've decluttered my clothes and I've really curated a wardrobe that fits my style and I feel comfortable in, I open my closet and I feel good when I look at it because I can always find what I want to wear, and there's not enough stuff to just start piling up on the floor and getting out of control to the point where it's weighing on my mind and increasing my anxiety. So definitely declutter clothing if that's something that you haven't done already, and just that one thing will reduce your anxiety levels so much. Number 5, physical books. I used to have a mental block about audiobooks, and I was like,
it's an audiobook. It's not like reading a real book.
Ugh, you are a snob and a half.
And I felt like I had to own it to be able to feel the cover, the weight of the book, the paper in my hands, the rustling as I turned the page, and it was like a tactile experience. But now as I've gotten older, I don't feel as motivated to read physical books anymore. And it's so much easier to just set them aside and do something else when I have free time. But with audiobooks, I actually love listening to audiobooks when I'm doing things like folding the laundry and washing the dishes. And so it means I'm able to read more because I'm listening to the audiobook while at the same time getting things done. And it's helped me be able to read more books without having to own a physical copy of the book and have it take up space in my home. And I remember recently I had seen a challenge that was like called the Project 50 challenge, I think it was, going around on YouTube, and I thought, oh, that looks like fun, I might try that. But when I went and I was reading the rules, they were like, you have to read a real book. It can't be an audiobook. Audiobooks don't count. And I just felt like a balloon deflating. I think this idea that audiobooks are not real books is just as toxic as saying that a minimalist can't be a minimalist if they have color in their home. So I am rejecting this toxic mindset, and I'm actually in the middle of a really good audiobook, and I feel like the audiobook must be better than the real book. The book is called The Power of Vulnerability by Brené Brown, and I can't imagine that the actual book would be better than the audiobook because it's her speaking on stage. So they recorded some of her sessions, and it's like the content that's in The Power of Vulnerability. If you're a reader and you like books, no matter if it's audiobooks or physical books, make sure that you go down and subscribe to my channel and ring the bell to turn on all notifications, because next month, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm actually going to be talking more about some of the best self-help books that I've read that have completely changed my life, and Power of Vulnerability is definitely one of them. If you haven't already, please give this video a like, and if you want to know what I do buy and consider essential to me as a minimalist, you can go check out this video, or I'll see you next week. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.